Good evening and welcome to ITV News. This is Friday night's calendar.
And these are tonight's headlines.
The lost opportunities that left a paranoid schizophrenic free to carry out a stabbing spree, killing a university librarian from Sheffield.
This is every parent's nightmare, and it became our reality. Agents need to be staffed, managed and monitored adequately. If not, this will continue to wreck innocent people's lives.
Also tonight, forced onto the road, disability campaigners in Ripon call for a ban on pavement parking.
40 years since the miners' strike.
Never underestimate the women!
The story of the women takes centre stage. And
50 years of a brilliant relationship. Have you got any tips?
Torval and Dean on the secret to skating success and what Christopher loves about living in Yorkshire.
And no ice in the forecast, but I do have plenty of the white stuff. Cloud, that is, not snow, but I do have Snow the Squirrel. All the detail a little later on.
Good evening. Multiple failings allowed a paranoid schizophrenic to be freed from prison to go on a stabbing spree, killing a university librarian from Sheffield, an inquest has heard.
Jacob Billington, remembered by colleagues at Sheffield Hallam University for his warmth and enthusiasm, died after being stabbed in the neck by Zephaniah MacLeod in Birmingham.
MacLeod, who for years had been hearing voices telling him to kill, fell off the authorities' radar after leaving prison and stopped taking medication. Now, we should warn you that Michael Billington's report starts with the 999 call made in the moments after Jacob's stabbing.
Patient breathing.
Hello, is he breathing?
Is he breathing and conscious?
He's breathing. He's losing a lot of blood from the neck.
Okay, and what's happened there?
There was a man walking and then next minute there was blood everywhere and I think he was stabbed in the neck.
Okay.
The immediate aftermath of Jacob Billington's stabbing in September 2020. His killer, paranoid schizophrenic Zephaniah MacLeod, seen here on dashcam pursuing his first victim after stabbing him in the neck. Of the 8 people attacked by MacLeod, Jacob was the only one to lose his life.
Stand still, turn round.
MacLeod was arrested the following day. He'd only been released from prison in South Wales 5 months earlier, where he'd been categorised as a dangerous offender who posed a risk to the public. But for 4 months following his release, authorities didn't know his whereabouts. He also hadn't been taking regular antipsychotic medication. Today, Jacob's family was in court as a coroner said agencies had failed to communicate effectively about MacLeod's release and criticised what she described as a lost opportunity to manage his mental health.
There's also a wider issue around the management of severely mentally ill individuals who are violent and pose a risk to the public. Agents need to be staffed, managed and monitored adequately in cases like ours and other recent cases. If not, this will continue to wreck innocent people's lives.
Now, a Leeds charity which has supported Jacob's family said the outcome could have been different had MacLeod been given the appropriate treatment.
There are things called assertive outreach teams. These are people that follow up people more robustly, they're in contact more regularly, they make sure they take their medication. This doesn't seem to have happened in MacLeod's case. They could have been more assertive, they could have followed up him more, and that's why I think this case was eminently preventable.
Swansea Bay University Health Board said today it had made several improvements around discharge planning within the prison mental health service. Jacob, his mother said, had his whole life ahead of him. Now she says lessons must be learned from the most heartbreaking of circumstances. Michael Billington, ITV News.
In other news tonight, police in North Yorkshire say they've stopped a car towing a suspected stolen caravan on the M1 to find the person behind the wheel was an 11-year-old boy. Officers received a report yesterday that a caravan had been stolen from a holiday site near Thirsk and was being towed by a black BMW. They stopped the car 45 minutes later and were staggered to find the driver was a schoolboy. He was arrested on suspicion of a number of offences but has since been bailed.
3 household waste recycling centres are to close in what's being described as the most devastating budget ever to be discussed by Bradford Council. Ford Hill Tip at Queensbury will close, along with Sugden End in Crossroads and Golden Butts at Ilkley. The new measures will also see council tax go up by 5%. And the Ingleborough Hall Children's Activity Centre will shut in a bid to stave off bankruptcy by allowing the council to fill its budget gaps with £220 million over 2 years. Well, with budgets everywhere under pressure, now to the family who are struggling to cope with the increasing demands of caring for a child with a degenerative disease. Muscular dystrophy is an incurable muscle wasting condition, which means that 3-year-old Hero will eventually be unable to walk.
But the added worry for Rachel Devereux and her 4 children is that they will soon need to adapt their home in Denbydale so he can continue to live there.
There is help available from the local council, but the grant hasn't increased in 16 years. Helen Steele has their story.
Life can be an uphill struggle for Rachel Devereux. She has 4 children. One has been diagnosed with a life-limiting condition.
It's a massive blow to any family when your life plans and your imagination of what life will be like, when that changes in an instant. But instead of a death sentence, we're seeing it as a life sentence, and how we can really give him the best life that he possibly can have.
3-year-old Hero has Duchenne's muscular dystrophy. While his twin brother can play boisterously, any fall could cause him serious injury. He'll need a wheelchair before high school, and that means major changes around the house. But the council grant of up to £30,000 offered to families to help adapt homes has not increased in 16 years.
What you could build in 2008 is completely different to what you could achieve now. And we're the people that are already stretched to the ends of our limits to then start campaigning for government to increase the amount that's available.
He will need a wheelchair and then a power chair and eventually a machine to help him breathe.
Rachel has launched one campaign though, and that's for help finding a suitable house within budget. She says there's a lack of homes being built suitable for wheelchairs, something that leading charities have found too.
We run a helpline service, and what we've seen over the last couple of years is that support for housing adaptations and finding appropriate housing has increased massively over the last few years, more so this year.
Now Rachel says the only place she can find locally is a church being sold off as a community enterprise.
So how do you feel about the fact that to find a house to fit your needs, you have to effectively buy a church?
There should be more Category 3 wheelchair user houses built. It should be more of a first thought than an afterthought.
How many?
Until they get the house they need, Rachel says her first thought every day is how to make each one count.
Well, Helen Steele's with us in the studio. Helen, £30,000 sounds like an adequate amount of money, but Rachel doesn't think that's going to go far enough to help, does she?
No, she doesn't. And according to the Bank of England, £30,000 back in 2008 will be around £47,000 now. So that gives you an idea of the shortfall. So where does the money come from? Well, Kirklees Council hands the grant out, but ultimately the money does come from government. And the government says that it has, over the past year, handed out around £4 million to Kirklees Council, and that councils can add to that fund if they can. Now, both the council and the government say the situation is far from ideal, and if people like Rachel are struggling, then they should stay in contact with their local council. And as a side note to that, there is research out there to show that if we built more wheelchair accessible homes, we could be saving the government millions of pounds a year.
Helen Steele, thank you.
Thank you. Stay with us because still to come before 6:30.
The countdown is on to a huge Yorkshire derby. Sheffield Wednesday take on Leeds. Join me shortly for all the build-up from Hillsborough.
And we started off cloudy, misty and murky again across many parts of the region, but there were some actual breaks and a bit of blue sky during the course of the afternoon. All your weekend forecast a little later on.
Charities are calling on the government to act more quickly to bring in a national ban on parking on pavements. They say that it can force wheelchair and mobility scooter users onto the road and then cause problems for blind and visually impaired people who don't expect a vehicle to be parked in their path.
One motoring organisation, however, says a blanket ban across the country isn't the solution. Kevin Ashford reports.
Parking on pavements can have a huge impact on the lives of some pedestrians. Jeremy Dunford is the Vice Chair of Ripon Disability Forum.
It's a common occurrence. If you live in any urban area, you meet pavements where someone stopped off a few minutes to drop something off, or they're parked to go to a neighbour, and you regularly meet a car on the pavement. You can often get past them, but sometimes you're completely blocked.
The laws governing pavement parking aren't straightforward. The Highway Code says motorists must not park on pavements in London, but should not do so elsewhere. Local authorities can bring in their own regulations in some cases, but campaigners say enforcement against pavement parking should apply across the country.
We've been in consultations for years on pavement parking, and you've got some local authorities who are enforcing it, some who aren't taking it seriously, some who aren't even having the conversations. I really don't know why it's taking so long. It's making pedestrians vulnerable when they walk out onto the road. I think it's something that local authorities need to take seriously.
However, one motoring organisation says a blanket national ban isn't the way to improve the situation.
The councils will have to carry out surveys of all their roads and work out where all the exceptions would have to be, where pavement parking would be allowed, because there are many streets in our towns and cities which are far too narrow, and if you had cars parked on them, emergency service vehicles couldn't get by and other vehicles couldn't get by, and it would cause massive problems. So exemptions have to be made.
The government told us that while local authorities already have powers to stop pavement parking, they were being consulted about further help, and the responses to that consultation will be published in due course. In the meantime, campaigners say they'll continue to pressure the authorities to crack down on pavement parking. Kevin Ashford, ITV News.
It's certainly a tricky issue. We'd love to know what you think about this story. Are you affected by pavement parking? You can drop us a line about this or any of the other stories we've been covering on Calendar by email. The address is calendar@itv.com, or we're also on Facebook, X and Instagram. And as you probably know, this week marks the 40th anniversary of the start of the miners' strike, a bitter year-long fight between Arthur Scargill's National Union of Mine Workers and Margaret Thatcher's Conservative government.
When looking back on 1984, well, you might picture male-dominated marches, picket lines and bloody scenes at the so-called Battle of Orgreave.
But it was also a time when wives, mothers and daughters mobilised, playing a crucial role in keeping the home fires burning. Their story's now been made into a play which opens in South Yorkshire tonight. Astrid Quinn went down to see their final rehearsals in Barnsley.
A movement that changed women's roles as they knew them. Retold on stage 40 years later in the place where it all began.
Never underestimate the women!
One of those front and centre was Betty Cook, who played a huge role in rallying the community and launching Barnsley's Women Against Pit Closures.
How does it feel that out of something so awful and that had such a huge impact on so many communities came something wonderful in terms of the women's movement?
It gave us strength, it gave us that confidence to question things. You know, if you want to arrest us, that's fine, get on with it. But a strong woman sticks up for herself, a stronger woman sticks up for others. And so I feel that I'm a stronger woman now.
Loads of lads running up and police laying into them, and then men being just dragged along the road and kicked and punched in the face.
Why is it so important, 40 years on, that this story is retold to other people?
It's more important for our young people that are coming along to let them see what happened and to encourage them to move forward. You've got a life, you've got a voice, use it, use it.
Real-life stories like Betty's were used to shape the play, which tells the tale of three sisters determined to help their community.
I really didn't want to write something that was, you know, like police and pickets fighting, you know, on picket lines and, you know, trying to... It just felt like we kind of knew that story. Whereas I think the women's story is a lot more nuanced and interesting, and I just think it's a fascinating story on its own.
Even though set 40 years ago, the play touches upon many issues still relevant today.
We did this play 10 years ago, and it was really special to be part of that time. But it's almost more special now because last time we did it, people weren't on strike. We didn't hear about food banks being a necessity, and now those things are the reality. So it just feels like such an important message for everybody, for women, and for the area that we're telling it in.
These women in Sheffield.
The curtains open for audiences tonight before the play makes its way around Yorkshire, bringing to life the bravery of women who stood up for what they believed in. Astrid Quinn, ITV News, South Yorkshire.
Looks like a great play,
It
well worth
does.
watching.
I wouldn't mind seeing that.
Yeah, definitely. We're staying in South Yorkshire now, in fact, because it's time for some sport, and we've got a big Yorkshire derby to look forward to later.
Zero Accounting Software sponsors ITV Regional Sports Report.
Yes, it's going to be a big night at both ends of the Championship table. Leeds United, who are gunning for promotion to the Premier League, go to Sheffield Wednesday, who are fighting to avoid relegation.
Arif Ahmed is at Hillsborough Forest this evening. First, Arif, Sheffield Wednesday are in trouble with the governing body again, aren't they?
Yeah, that's right, Ian. This is just the latest charge on the rap sheet for Sheffield Wednesday this season. The latest incident took place here at Hillsborough during their midweek win over Plymouth, where a missile was thrown towards one of the assistant referees. Now, this incident wasn't caught on camera, but thankfully it missed the linesman and he was unharmed. But Sheffield Wednesday are yet again under investigation from the Football Association. But the club today have implored their fans to be on their best behaviour for tonight's game against Leeds United for what is expected to be their biggest attendance of the season.
So to matters on the pitch now, Arif, and this one really matters, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely, Ian. Both teams desperate for the 3 points for different reasons. Leeds United is hoping to keep pace with the top two in that fight for automatic promotion to the Premier League. Now, Leeds United have been in fantastic form this calendar year. In 2024, they are unbeaten. They're yet to lose a league game. They've won 10 of their 11 games so far. Sheffield Wednesday, on the other hand, earlier this season, they looked destined to be relegated back to League One. But since Danny Rule came in October, he really steadied the ship and brought real belief here. They still are in the relegation zone, but a win here tonight will take them out of the bottom three for the first time this season.
If you say this, yeah, we had also a run. We created momentum, and yeah, at home with our massive fans, it could be a special night, yeah. And in football, you never know what happens, but it could be our night.
At the moment, and we are respectful, but we also know that we are also in a brilliant shape. Last 11 games, at least 11 games in this year, 10 wins, 1 draw. So I don't see one reason why we should travel in fear.
Well, it's all quiet here at Hillsborough just now, but in a couple of hours this place is going to be absolutely bouncing. The atmosphere is going to be absolutely incredible. Leeds United are certainly going to bring their fans down the M1 in their numbers. In Sheffield Wednesday, well, they're going to give it as good as they've got.
Well, let's hope that you've not jinxed it then. But Arif, it's not the only big sporting fixture this weekend, is it?
No, that's right, Lara. Is York Acorn, the last amateur team left in Rugby League's Challenge Cup. They go to semi-professional side Halifax on Sunday, looking to cause a massive shock in that competition. Well, last night I went to their final training session to see how they're preparing for the biggest game in their history. They might have the biggest game of their careers this weekend, but you wouldn't know it.
We can't be having another ball. What's going on?
There was no tension in the air as players from York Acorn, the last amateur team left in the Challenge Cup, held their final training session before they take on Championship side Halifax on Sunday.
It's been pretty laid back. Obviously, we're massive underdogs, so we know there's no pressure on us. You know, we're just going to go give it its best, and hopefully, you never know.
Halifax will be the team that I've got the pressure, and we're just going to go. We put a good performance in, and that's the best we can do, really.
Josh Mortimer has been the head coach since 2019. A former player here, he's masterminded the club's record-breaking run. And when the two teams take to the field, he'll be coming up against the head coach he's admired for years.
I'm a big Featherstone fan, and Liam Finn's a Feather legend in my opinion. I grew up watching him, rip it up for us in the sort of mid-teens, and he's a great operator as a football. But I like the way he sort of conducted himself, and it'd be great for me to pitch myself against him personally, and I've got a lot of time for him.
If York Acorn are to cause one of the biggest shocks in the competition's history, they'll all need to be on the same page. For some, that won't be a problem. 6 of the squad don't just play in the same team, they also work together as gas engineers. Anthony Chilton is club captain by night, and by day, he's a self-proclaimed director of the gas noddies.
I think I've taught about probably 3 or 4 of our team now how to work on the gas, and we're getting a little team together, so yeah.
You spend a lot of time working with each other, and then you play. You don't get sick of each other?
There's one lad, Jordan Hyde, who I've played with him since I was 6. He now works with me all the time, and he gets pretty annoying.
It's huge for the town, isn't it, as well?
My phone's never been as busy. But it's been weird. Like I went to the dentist the other day, and I got recognised by 2 people in there, and it's great for the exposure that the club's getting. It's great for the boys, and long may it continue.
York are the clear underdogs going into this game, so they'll need to be perfect to beat the Panthers. Well, good luck to York Acorn. Everyone backs the underdogs, don't they? But we're all set here at Hillsborough for an 8 o'clock kick-off. A Yorkshire derby leads against Sheffield Wednesday. This will be a good one.
Thank you very much, Arif. And let's see now with Kerry what the weather's going to be like at 8 o'clock tonight in Sheffield.
Yeah, they've picked the best of the weather. That's the most perfect time when the match is on, is the drier and the clearer and the most settled conditions that we've had all day in Sheffield and all tonight, to be quite honest. We also had those very strong winds. A lot of your emails have been saying it's feeling chilly, it's been bracing. This was Filey this afternoon. A big thank you to Carly Jane Swift for the share. And a note, over the weekend, the coastline, we're still going to get those easterly winds, and coupled with high tides, there will be some big waves to watch out for. But here's a reminder of how the week started. Absolutely glorious, freezing cold and plenty of sunshine. So we have had a bit of a mixture over the last few days, and it hasn't quite been that glorious, has it? But this time we had these low cloud across Ilkley towards Beamsley. This was also the beginning of the week, Monday and Tuesday. But towards Beamley Beacon this time last year, is what I wanted to say, got a bit excited about that. It was snow. In fact, the 9th to the 10th, we had the amber snow warning. And it was mainly due to not just the amount of snow that was falling from the sky, but also some very strong winds. And we had quite a lot of drifting, as you can see in Roger Nelson's picture there. So a big thank you for sharing. And of course, any photos that you send to us remain in our archives for us to share whenever we want. So no snow in the forecast over the next few days, but I have got Snowy the squirrel, which I hinted to earlier on in the programme. I've got a little 10-second video here of Snowy the squirrel in Bob Carter's garden. Now, this comes to Bob Carter's garden regularly. It's not an albino squirrel, it's grey and white there. It's something called leucism, which is a condition which basically affects the pigment of the skin. It can do it partially or fully, so you can either get a white one or a grey and white one, like Snowy here. So a big thank you for sharing.
It's beautiful, isn't it?
Absolutely gorgeous, yeah.
Bob does spot some things, doesn't he?
Bob's good, thanks Bob.
Yeah, thank you.
Now finally to 2 of the most beloved figure skaters in the world. 24 million viewers tuned in to watch Torvill and Dean perform in 1984 at the Winter Olympics, making it one of the most watched television events in UK history.
Yes, yeah, you can remember it, can't you? The pair won gold, and these days can be regularly seen on ITV's Dancing on Ice. Ahead of the big finale this weekend, well, our Adam Fowler caught up with them backstage to talk about their farewell tour.
They're 2 of the most celebrated ice dancers in the world. But after performing together for nearly half a century, they've announced they'll be coming to Sheffield Arena next year as part of their last ever UK tour.
We were talking about it over a year ago. We went, it's 15 years since we've been skating together. It seems like it's a celebration, and that it would be great to do a tour, and maybe it will be our last tour, and that's how it sort of arrived at that.
Maybe it'll be a last tour.
No, it will be a last tour. It's absolutely last time round.
This is something I usually ask married couples, but 50 years of a brilliant relationship. Have you got any tips?
Not getting married. That's what we always say.
Recently, the dancers returned to Sarajevo, where, in 1984, their interpretation of Ravel's Bolero became one of the greatest sporting moments of the 20th century.
It was sort of exciting and emotional at the same time, because to go back there after 40 years and all those memories came flooding back. And I think the emotional side of it is knowing what happened after the Olympics. You know, a few years later there was this terrible war. The actual stadium that we performed in was knocked down. 30 years ago we went back and it had been rebuilt. This year we actually walked into the middle of where the ice would have been, where we would have started the Bolero, and just looking around the building brought back memories like, oh, the judges were over there, that's where the audience were, the scores were up there, that kind of memories really.
And Chris, you've recently moved to Huddersfield, you're doing some coaching in Sheffield. Can we call you an honorary Yorkshireman?
I'd like to think so, yeah. Yeah.
How's it going there?
I still haven't mastered the tea thing yet. I've never drunk tea. So
oh, right.
Yorkshire tea is still on my list to be done. No, we love it there. It's great countryside, lush, beautiful. And the people say what they mean.
I like to shake a leg. I like to nod my head.
Though the pair have announced their last UK tour, it doesn't mean they'll be hanging up their skates completely, with Dancing on Ice having a special place in their hearts.
That seat's got our name on it permanently. You know, we were part of creating the show from the go-get, and it exists because of 1984, because of Bolero and the success. And, you know, the end of the competition, the two contestants get to do a version of Bolero as well. So it's really significant, and we'll always be a part of that as long as Dancing on Ice is going.
And that's something fans across the country will be holding on to. Adam Fowler, ITV News.
Wow.
Do you think we'll still be together in 40 years' time?
I think we might be dead. Who's Kerry?
Good visibility on the horizon. TUI sponsors ITV Yorkshire Weather.
Hello again. Yes, it was an improving story from the east during the course of today with some brighter spells, but we did have that strong wind for the coastline, producing some fairly choppy waves and right over the tops of the Pennines. And a reminder that we have had some decent sunny spells during the course of this week, especially of course at the beginning on Monday and here on Tuesday. So looking ahead then to the weekend, low pressure develops to the south of the UK. It continues to feed in that easterly for us, and one or two weather fronts certainly for tomorrow evening and again first thing on Sunday. But a little ridge of high pressure, hopefully giving us at least a quieter and drier spell on Tuesday. So in a bit more detail for this evening, the best of the clear spells coming through. Overnight tonight, we do start to see the cloud thicken again, and we do have a weather front approaching from the southeast by the time we reach tomorrow morning. It's always on the blustery side, so nothing too chilly, but again similar to previous nights, just down into the low single figures, giving us a chilly start for the weekend. 6:34 and 6 o'clock are your Saturday sun times. So tomorrow this system pushes north quite quickly during the morning, giving some showery outbreaks of rain, a few moderate pulses over higher ground, could be a tiny bit wintry in the air as it falls over the dales, and some misty low cloud for a time as well, but it does improve from the south to brighter blustery conditions and highs of around 8 to 10 Celsius, so not too bad in the sunshine. Now as we head into Sunday, we are expecting tomorrow night showery outbreaks. Sunday initially unsettled, but hopefully that easterly pushing the rain away into the second half of the day, although we do think it will be fairly cloudy for the second half of the weekend. Drizzly on Monday, a bit better for Tuesday.
TUI sponsors ITV Yorkshire Weather.
There you go, not the best of weekends, but definitely less wintry than it was this time last year.
I feel like you're dressing for spring, Kerry.
I've tried, with all the grey skies over the last few days, I've tried to bring a bit of sunshine.
You've dressed for autumn.
Yeah, what does that say?
Have a great weekend, won't you? Good night.
Bye-bye.
Bye.